What is going on, everyone? Luca Rosano here, back with another video. Hope you're all doing well. Happy Saturday. Hope everybody's been enjoying their summer. Summer's coming to an end as fall is right around the corner, and that means there's going to be a lot of sports action coming your way. The NBA is nearing its return very, very soon. And in today's video, I just wanted to share my thoughts on the Raptors and the state of the Eastern Conference. We already know the Eastern Conference is going to be absolutely stacked. A lot of big moves have happened. The latest, Donovan Mitchell going to the Cavaliers. So before we get into that, do me a solid favor, guys. Drop a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Plus, turn on those post notifications, as there will be a lot more content coming this summer once the Raptors and NBA season rolls on. Today's video sponsor is Dave & Buster's. If you're ever in the Vaughan area, go check out Dave & Buster's Vaughan and let them know that Luca Rosano sent you. Dave & Buster's Vaughan's going to be bumping for Raptors games and other sporting events that are to come. Before we get into my thoughts on the Eastern Conference and how the Raptors stack up in what's going to be a very competitive Eastern Conference, I did want to report on some news that dropped earlier today of the time me recording this. Bleacher Report's Jake Fisher notes that the Raptors and Pelicans are interested in Bojan Bogdanovic. He did this during his Please Don't Aggregate This podcast. He said this, and I quote, "Toronto has been pretty consistently mentioned there. The Pelicans, I've now heard as well, are a team that's been on him. Phoenix, all in addition to the Lakers. There's got to be more too, but those are the four teams I've heard from multiple people that I know." And this is not surprising. I think the Jazz are headed for a full fire sale. Obviously, they traded Donovan Mitchell, and there's going to be a couple of other pieces that teams are going to be interested in. Bogdanovic being one, the other being Jordan Clarkson. Apparently, though, the Jazz want a first-round pick for both, so we'll see if they get their asking price. But the Jazz, I know they've blown it up, but they've actually had a pretty good offseason in terms of accumulating future assets. So we'll see what happens there. But I don't expect the Raptors to do anything drastic. What we see with them now, that is going to be their team going into this season. And now let's talk about the Raptors. They did have a quiet offseason. I mean, they did what they needed to do. They brought back some key role players from a season ago, Boucher, Thad Young. They made the pickup of Otto Porter Jr. There wasn't that big splash. Obviously, there was the whole Kevin Durant saga, and that was ongoing. And I'm happy the Raptors didn't completely gut their team by including Scottie Barnes in a trade for KD. So overall, I'm actually okay with the Raptors doing what they did. Remember, they did also draft Christian Koloko. He's going to be a good young prospect. He's a big that the Raptors can certainly use. But overall, the Raptors are going to be carrying the team that they did a season ago into this season. And they're going to be banking on guys like Achua, Scottie Barnes, Gary Trent Jr. to take that leap, to take that next step. Even an OG Anunoby. I know we've been waiting for quite some time for him to take that big leap, but they got a lot of good young pieces. Don't forget, they got guys like Siakam and Fred VanVleet, two All-Stars. Siakam's coming off an All-NBA season. VanVleet coming off of his first All-Star appearance. So the Raptors do have a good balance, and they got, in my opinion, one of the best coaches in the NBA, Nick Nurse. So that being said, how do the Raptors stack up in the Eastern Conference going into this season? So I'm going to break it down in terms of tiers. So in my opinion, the top tier, that's going to include the Celtics and the Bucks. I think these are clearly the two best teams in the Eastern Conference. The Milwaukee Bucks, we know what they're capable of. If Middleton was healthy for last year's playoffs, who knows? Maybe they would have made it back to the NBA Finals. And you look at the Boston Celtics, that looks to be the best team in the Eastern Conference. Obviously, they made it to the finals, coming up short against the Warriors. They did have a nice offseason, bringing in guys like Brogdon. They did receive some unfortunate news with Gallinari, who's expected to miss all of the season. But the Celtics are still going to be one of the best teams in all of the NBA. So that's my top tier in the East. Celtics, Bucks. Now let's move on to Tier 2. And I think this is where it gets really, really fun. Tier 2 I have consisting of these teams. Sixers, Raptors, Nets, Heat, and Cavs. In no particular order. I'll get to where I ultimately see the Raptors finishing in the East a little bit later. But this is the second tier of teams that I think are going to be battling it out to see who ranks from 3rd to 7th. You talk about the 76ers. They're going to be a good team. I don't know if a lot of people are high on them. I personally think they are going to be better than a season ago. Getting PJ Tucker was a big move in my opinion. They just got Harrell. That's going to bolster their bench. The Nets, that's the biggest unknown, and that's going to be a team that's going to be interesting to see what happens. They're running it back. You had a whole crazy offseason. KD, was he going to be traded? Ultimately, he doesn't get traded. He's going to be back with Kyrie. Are there going to be any more shenanigans? If there's not going to be shenanigans, you take the Nets team at face value, they're still going to be a very good team. They have enough talent to go out there and win a championship. Then you got the Miami Heat. I think they had a disappointing offseason. They didn't do much, and I think that's why. I was expecting the Heat to be a little bit more aggressive. Losing PJ Tucker was big for them, and also Kyle Lowry is going to be another year older. Jimmy Butler, he's obviously going to do what he does, but how are the Heat going to look this season? I see them taking a little bit of a step back from a year ago. Like, I don't see them finishing first, but they're still going to be amongst the second tier. The Cavaliers, we know what they just did. Donovan Mitchell, this is going to be a very interesting team, very intriguing team. This could be a team that could go as high as being third in the East, for all we know. I mean, you look at Mitchell, Garland, Mobley, Allen, Okoro, that's going to be a pretty good starting five. The Cavaliers still got other guys like Kevin Love, Ricky Rubio. Don't sleep on the Cavs. I'm actually really high on them. And then, of course, you got the Toronto Raptors in this tier. Just named a couple of reasons why I think they could be a very good team. I mean, if they have some leaps come from guys that I mentioned, like Barnes, Gary Trent Jr., Achua, and their normal all-stars do what they do, the Raptors are still going to be a tough out. I mean, we already know how good this team is defensively. When you talk about perimeter defense, they got the chemistry, and they do have depth. The Raptors have depth, and I think that's something that's not being talked about enough. I mean, you look at their presumed starting five and the bench pieces and the role players that are going to be coming off the bench, the Raptors are going to be deep, and I think that's going to make them a tough out for any team in the NBA. Okay, next we got the third tier, and I got teams like the Hawks. I'm not high on the Hawks this season. I know they got DeJounte Murray, but I just don't think they're going to be a team that makes it deep in the playoffs. So personally, I'm not high on the Hawks. I'm not high on the Bulls. Sorry, Bulls fans. I think this team not doing anything in the offseason, and we kind of saw them crumble towards the end of last season. I could see this team miss the playoffs outright. The Knicks, they got a whole ton of money to their big three, or people are calling it their mid three. Julius Randle, you got RJ Barrett, fellow Canadian. I actually like RJ Barrett a lot. And Jalen Brunson. We'll see how Brunson does with his new team in New York. And the Pistons. This is a team that I did a video on in the past. You already know that I'm high on the Pistons. I think they're going to take a leap this season. I think they could flirt with the play-in. And I think Cade's going to take a leap. I think they had a really good draft. So the Pistons, I have them in this third tier as well. And then finally, the bottom tier, Hornets. I see them taking a step back. The Wizards, I don't really know what the Wizards are doing. They're kind of in this weird middle where, like, are they trying to go for a playing spot? Are they trying to be competitive? Or are they trying to blow it up? I really don't know what that team's doing in the long haul. The Pacers, and finally the Magic. The Magic, they got some good young pieces. They definitely have a bright future, but as of this season, I don't see them competing with any of the top teams. So let's now get into where I see the Raptors stacking up in the East. Where do I see them finishing in the East? So I've kind of broken it down into like three categories. Best case, the Raptors could, I think, make it to the third spot. And that's going back to the second tier. I think amongst those teams they're going to be battling with the Sixers, Nets, Heat, and Cavs. The Raptors could clearly be better than those teams if they really have a good season and they finish third. Worst case, I could see the Raptors finishing seventh just because of the amount of talented teams in that tier with, again, the Sixers, Heat, Cavs, and Nets. So if the Raptors have a tough start to the season, knock on wood, an injury happens, then the Raptors could stumble. But at the very worst, I still see them being in the play-in. I don't see the Raptors completely falling out of this thing like other people do. And then where do I see them finishing? My prediction, and I'll go on record and say this now, I see the Raptors finishing fifth. I think the Raptors are going to be in the same spot they were a season ago, and I would be good with that. I think if the Raptors could be around that 4 to 5 mark, that would be a very good season. And even if they finish fifth, given the amount of talented teams in this Eastern Conference, I think a lot of fans would take that. I personally would take that. So again, best case, I see a third. Worst case, seventh. Where I see them finishing, I'll go with fifth. That will be my official prediction on where I see the Raptors finishing this season. It's like every time people underestimate or doubt the Raptors or think they're going to have an off season or a bad year, we already know they rise to the top. And this is a team that, other than the Tampa season, they have gone over on their win totals that Vegas has given them. So this is a team you definitely don't want to bet against. And I'm excited for the season. I think there's going to be a lot of good basketball. Again, the Eastern Conference is going to be so fun. There's a lot of good stuff that's going to be happening. A lot of teams got very good, and they did make moves, unlike the Raptors. But the Raptors have a lot of good young players that could take that next step. And if that happens, they'll be a very dangerous team in the Eastern Conference. So we'll see what happens. But what do you think of this, guys? Where do you see the Raptors finishing in the Eastern Conference? Where do you see them ranking amongst the other teams in the East? Let me know your comments down below. I read all of them. Again, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, plus ring the bell for more. And that is it for this video. As always, thank you so much for watching. This is Luca Rosano signing off, and I'll catch you all again in the next video.